The salt air burned Dr. Elena Reyes's lungs as she stood on the icy dock, staring at what might be the worst decision of her entire life. The research station jutted into the Pacific like a broken tooth, metal and glass and concrete that had been abandoned so long the ocean was trying to reclaim it. Rust streaked every surface. Windows were shattered or missing entirely. The main building sagged to one side, as if exhausted from decades of fighting the tide. Behind her, pressed against the rusted guardrail, 8-year-old Sofia clutched her backpack and tried not to cry. Her daughter's lips were turning blue despite the 3 layers of clothing Elena had insisted she wear. February on the Oregon coast was unforgiving, and they'd been standing in the wind for 20 minutes while Elena worked up the courage to unlock the door. "Mama, can we go back to the car?" Sofia's voice was small, nearly lost in the wind. Elena turned and saw her daughter shivering, saw the fear in those dark eyes that had seen too much in the past year, and felt her heart crack a little more. The Honda was parked in the gravel lot 100 yards back, their entire lives packed into trash bags and cardboard boxes that filled the trunk and back seat. They'd been living in that car for 4 months. 4 months of parking lots and gas station bathrooms and pretending this was all temporary. "Not yet, baby. Let's see what's inside first." The key felt impossibly heavy in Elena's hand. It had arrived 3 weeks ago in a manila envelope from an attorney in Portland. Along with it came a death certificate for Dr. Marcus Reyes, her father, who she hadn't spoken to in 12 years. A man who'd chosen his research over his family so completely that Elena's mother had divorced him when Elena was 16 and they'd never looked back. The letter from the attorney had been brief and businesslike. Marcus Reyes had died of a heart attack in his Seattle apartment on December 3rd. His will left everything to his only child, Elena. That everything consisted of $1,247 in a checking account and this, the Tidemark Marine Research Station, located on a rocky peninsula 40 miles south of Newport, Oregon. Elena had looked up the property online using the last of her phone's data at a McDonald's. The images showed a facility that had once been state-of-the-art, built in 1987 with funding from the National Science Foundation. 3 buildings arranged around a central courtyard, multiple research labs, an extensive aquarium system for studying Pacific marine life. Her father had purchased it in 2003 after the government decommissioned it, supposedly to continue his independent research. But that had been 20 years ago. The satellite images showed buildings with collapsed roofs and parking lots overrun with weeds. The property looked abandoned, forgotten, worthless. Still, it was property. It was shelter, and Elena had nowhere else to go. She'd lost her position at Portland Community College in September. Budget cuts, they'd said. Last hired, first fired. Her adjunct teaching position in marine biology had paid barely enough to cover rent on their 1-bedroom apartment. When the job disappeared, so did everything else. The landlord had been sympathetic but firm. No income meant no lease renewal. By November, they were in Honda. By December, Elena was down to her last $100. By January, she'd started wondering if she should call social services, surrender Sofia to the system, so at least her daughter would have a warm bed and regular meals. Then the envelope arrived. A dead father she'd spent years resenting had left her something. Maybe it was worthless. Maybe it was condemned and contaminated and completely unusable. But it was more than she had yesterday. Elena inserted the key into the padlock that secured the main entrance. The lock was industrial grade, surprisingly well-maintained despite the rust covering everything else. It clicked open smoothly. She pulled the heavy door, and it swung inward with a groan that sounded almost alive. Cold air rushed out, carrying the smell of salt and metal and something else, something chemical and sharp that made Elena's scientist brain sit up and take notice. "Stay close to me," Elena said, taking Sofia's hand. They stepped inside together. The entrance opened into what had once been a reception area. A desk sat to one side, its surface covered in dust an inch thick. Filing cabinets lined one wall. A corkboard still held faded safety notices and what looked like a duty roster from 2003. The linoleum floor was cracked and buckled, but structurally sound. Elena pulled out her phone and turned on the flashlight. The beam cut through the dusty air, illuminating a hallway that branched in 3 directions. Signs pointed toward labs, aquarium, and residential. "It smells weird," Sofia whispered. "Old buildings always smell weird, baby. That's just dust and salt air." But Elena was lying. The smell wasn't just age and neglect. There was something else underneath, something that suggested systems still running, electricity still flowing, processes still active long after humans had abandoned this place. They explored the residential wing first. A small apartment with a bedroom, bathroom, and kitchenette. The furniture was covered in sheets. When Elena pulled them back, she found a bed frame with a bare mattress, a table with 2 chairs, a kitchenette with a sink and small refrigerator. Everything coated in dust, but intact. The bathroom had running water. Elena turned the tap, and after a minute of brown sputtering, clear, cold water poured out. She nearly cried with relief. "We have water, Sofia. Real, running water." Sofia's face brightened. "Can I take a bath?" "Soon, baby. Let's make sure everything else works first." They found the electrical panel in a utility closet. Elena, drawing on years of working in research labs, traced the system carefully. The main breakers were switched off, but when she examined the setup, she saw quality engineering. Solar panels on the roof, she guessed, backed by some kind of battery system or generator. She took a deep breath and flipped the main breaker. Lights flickered on throughout the facility. Not all of them. Some bulbs had died over the years, but enough to illuminate the hallways, the reception area, the residential quarters. The refrigerator in the kitchenette hummed to life. A heating vent somewhere began to rattle and wheeze. Sofia squealed with delight. "Mama, you fixed it. You fixed the lights." Elena laughed despite everything. "I just turned them on, baby. Someone else made sure they still worked." Her father, Marcus, must have maintained the systems even after abandoning the facility. The thought was strange, almost unsettling. Why keep the power running on a property you weren't using? Why pay for maintenance and utilities on a research station you'd walked away from? They explored the labs next. 3 large rooms, each one filled with equipment covered in sheets and plastic tarps. Elena recognized some of it. Microscopes, centrifuges, spectrometers, the tools of marine biology research. All of it dated but high quality. All of it gathering dust. The aquarium was the most remarkable space. A massive room, easily 40 feet long and 20 feet wide, with one entire wall made of reinforced glass looking out at the Pacific Ocean. The view would have been breathtaking in daylight. Rocky coastline, tide pools, waves crashing against ancient stone. But what caught Elena's attention was the tank system that dominated the room's interior. A series of connected aquariums, each one perhaps 10 feet long and 4 feet deep, arranged in a circular pattern around a central filtration hub. The tanks were empty now, their glass walls clouded with mineral deposits and algae. But the filtration system, Elena approached it slowly, her scientists recognizing sophistication that shouldn't exist in a facility this old. The filtration hub was massive, a stainless steel structure roughly 8 feet tall and 6 feet in diameter. Pipes and tubes connected it to each tank. Control panels covered its surface, their displays dark. She touched one of the panels. It was cold under her fingers, but not with the cold of abandonment. This was the cold of active refrigeration. "Mama, what is all this?" "Research equipment, baby. Your grandfather was a marine biologist. He studied ocean life. Like fish, invertebrates, microorganisms. All the creatures that live in the sea." Elena walked around the filtration hub, examining it from every angle. This wasn't standard equipment. This was custom-built, engineered for some specific purpose beyond simple aquarium maintenance. The scale alone suggested something unusual. Most research stations didn't need filtration systems this sophisticated unless they were maintaining very sensitive species or very large volumes of water. She found a door on the far side of the aquarium room, half hidden behind a stack of empty equipment crates. The door was labeled mechanical, authorized personnel only. Elena tried the handle. Locked, but the same key that had opened the main entrance worked here, too. The mechanical room beyond was warm, noticeably warmer than the rest of the facility. Banks of equipment lined the walls: pumps, heaters, chillers, monitoring systems, and control panels that glowed with active displays. Everything was running. Everything had been running for years, maintained by automated systems that had outlasted human oversight. Sofia pressed close to her mother's side. "Why is everything still on?" "I don't know, baby." But Elena was starting to form a hypothesis. Her father had been obsessive about his research. She remembered that much from her childhood. He'd disappear into his lab for days at a time, emerging only for food and sleep. Her mother used to joke bitterly that Marcus loved his specimens more than his family. What if he'd been maintaining this facility remotely? What if the systems were automated, programmed to run indefinitely, protecting whatever research he'd been conducting? She examined the control panels. Digital displays showed temperature readings, pH levels, salinity measurements, oxygen saturation, all of them indicating active monitoring of something, even though the tanks upstairs were empty. Then she saw it, a display showing water flow, not in liters per minute or gallons per hour, in thousands of gallons per hour, massive volumes being processed through the filtration system continuously. But if the tanks upstairs were empty, where was that water going? Elena traced the main pipe from the filtration system. It disappeared into the floor, heading downward. She followed it to a corner of the mechanical room where another door waited, this one unmarked. She used the key again. The door opened onto a metal staircase, descending into darkness. "Stay here, Sofia. Don't move until I come back." "Mama, I don't want you to go down there." "I know, baby, but I need to see what's there. I'll be right back. I promise." Elena descended the stairs slowly, phone flashlight extended in front of her. The temperature dropped with each step. The air grew thick with humidity and salt. The sound of moving water echoed from below. Not the crash of ocean waves, but something more controlled, more artificial. The stairs ended in a large underground chamber carved directly from the bedrock. Elena's flashlight beam swept across the space, and her breath caught. More tanks, dozens of them, arranged in careful rows, each one roughly the size of a shipping container. These weren't empty. These were filled with seawater that glowed faintly with bioluminescence, creating an otherworldly blue-green light that pulsed gently like a heartbeat. Elena approached the nearest tank slowly, almost reverently. Inside, suspended in the water, she could see shapes moving. Not fish, something else. Colonies of what looked like coral or sea sponges, but with structures too regular, too geometric to be entirely natural. She recognized them immediately. Her father's life's work. Bioengineered marine organisms designed to extract and concentrate rare earth elements from seawater. She'd read his early papers years ago, before the split. He'd theorized that certain marine species could be genetically modified to act as biological filters, pulling valuable minerals from ocean water the way oysters filtered plankton. The scientific community had been skeptical. The technology was decades away, they'd said. The concentrations were too low. The process would never be economically viable. But Marcus had continued his research, and apparently, he'd succeeded. Elena moved from tank to tank, her phone's flashlight revealing the extent of the operation. Each tank contained different organisms, some coral-like, others resembling kelp forests, still others appearing as amorphous colonies of bacterial mats that glowed with internal light. The filtration system upstairs was feeding seawater to these organisms continuously. They were processing thousands of gallons per hour, extracting minerals, concentrating them, storing them in their modified cellular structures. At the back of the chamber, Elena found the collection system, a series of smaller tanks where the organisms were apparently harvested and their accumulated minerals extracted. Industrial-grade centrifuges, chemical processing equipment, storage containers labeled with element symbols: Nd, Pr, Di, Tb, neodymium, praseodymium, dysprosium, terbium. Rare earth elements essential for modern electronics, electric vehicles, renewable energy systems. Elements worth thousands of dollars per kilogram on the open market. and her father had been producing them here, in secret, for years. Elena found a computer workstation near the collection system. Surprisingly, it was still powered on, its screen glowing softly in the darkness. She touched the keyboard, and the display came to life. A spreadsheet appeared. Production logs dating back 15 years. Columns showing dates, elements, quantities, purity percentages. The most recent entries were from November, just 3 months ago, shortly before Marcus died. Elena scrolled through the data, her scientific training automatically processing the numbers. According to these logs, the facility had been producing an average of 8 kilograms of rare earth concentrates per month. Not pure elements that would require additional refining, but high-grade concentrates that could be sold to specialty processors. 8 kilograms per month for 15 years. That was over 1,400 kilograms total. Elena pulled up market prices on her phone, fingers shaking. Rare earth concentrates sold for anywhere from $5,000 to $50,000 per kilogram, depending on element composition and purity. Even using conservative estimates. She did the math 3 times because she couldn't believe the result. If the material was properly refined and marketed, the accumulated production was worth between $40 and $60 million. Elena's legs gave out. She sat down hard on the concrete floor, staring at the screen, at the numbers that couldn't possibly be real. Her father, the man who'd abandoned his family for his research, who'd chosen specimens over his wife and daughter, who'd died alone in a Seattle apartment while she was sleeping in a Honda with her daughter, he'd been running a facility that generated millions of dollars in rare earth elements. And he'd left it all to her. Sofia's voice drifted down from above. "Mama, are you okay?" Elena couldn't answer immediately. She pressed her hand to her mouth, fighting hysteria that wanted to emerge as laughter or sobs or screaming. "I'm okay, baby," she finally managed. "I'm coming back up." She climbed the stairs on shaking legs. Sofia stood exactly where Elena had left her, anxious but obedient. Elena pulled her daughter into a fierce hug. "What did you find?" Sofia asked, her voice muffled against Elena's shoulder. "Something impossible. Something your grandfather was working on." "Is it good?" Elena thought about the question. Thought about 4 months sleeping in a car. Thought about the $37 in her checking account. Thought about the facility surrounding them. Abandoned, forgotten, but still running, still producing, still generating wealth that no one knew existed. "Yes, baby. I think it might be very good." They spent that first night in the residential apartment. Elena found clean sheets in a closet and made up the bed. The heating system struggled, but eventually brought the temperature to something bearable. They ate peanut butter sandwiches from supplies in the Honda and drank water from the tap that tasted of minerals and salt but was clean enough. Sofia fell asleep quickly, exhausted from cold and fear and the overwhelming strangeness of the day. Elena lay beside her daughter and stared at the ceiling, mind racing through possibilities and problems. If her father had been producing rare earth elements here for 15 years, where had he stored them? Where had he sold them? Had he sold them at all? Or were they still here somewhere, hidden, waiting? The laptop she'd found showed production logs, but no sales records. No financial transactions. No indication that Marcus had ever monetized his research. Which meant Elena sat up slowly, careful not to wake Sofia. She grabbed her phone and went back downstairs, back to the underground chamber with its glowing tanks and their impossible contents. The collection system had multiple storage containers. She'd seen them earlier, but hadn't examined them closely. Now she approached systematically, opening each container, checking its contents. The first 3 were empty. The 4th contained a grayish powder that resembled fine sand. Elena recognized it from her graduate research. Rare earth concentrate, probably a mix of multiple elements, waiting for further refinement. The container held maybe 10 kilograms, worth between $50,000 and $500,000, depending on composition. The 5th container was heavier. When Elena opened it, she found something different, refined material, separated into individual elements. Small bottles labeled with chemical symbols and purity percentages. These weren't concentrates. These were industrial-grade elements. She found a clipboard hanging on the wall nearby. Inventory sheets. Marcus's handwriting. She recognized it from childhood birthday cards, noting dates, quantities, refinement levels. According to the inventory, this chamber contained 47 kilograms of refined neodymium, purity 99.2%, 31 kilograms of praseodymium, purity 98.7%, 18 kilograms of dysprosium, purity 99.1%, 9 kilograms of terbium, purity 98.9%, various smaller quantities of europium, gadolinium, and yttrium. Elena's hands were shaking so badly she could barely hold her phone to calculate market values. Neodymium, approximately $80 per kilogram. 47 kilograms equals $3,760,000 praseodymium, approximately $120 per kilogram. 31 kilograms equals $3,720,000 dysprosium, approximately $350 per kilogram. 18 kilograms equals $6,300,000 terbium, approximately $1,200 per kilogram. 9 kilograms equals $10,800,000. And that was just the major elements. The total value of the refined material in this chamber was somewhere north of $25 million. But there had to be more. 15 years of production. Where was the rest? Elena searched the chamber methodically, looking for additional storage. Behind the collection system, hidden behind a false panel that blended seamlessly with the wall, she found another door. This one didn't open with her key. This one had a digital lock with a keypad. She stared at it, mind racing. What would Marcus use as a code? Something memorable, but not obvious. Something connected to his research. She tried a few combinations based on atomic numbers and molecular weights. Nothing worked. Then she remembered. Marcus's birthday. March 14th, 1958. 031458. The lock beeped and clicked open. The room beyond was climate-controlled, kept at a precise temperature and humidity level. Floor-to-ceiling shelving units filled the space, each one lined with containers. Some were small bottles like she'd found in the collection area. Others were larger drums, all of them labeled with Marcus's precise handwriting. Elena walked slowly down the first aisle, cataloging what she saw. More refined elements, more concentrates waiting for processing, but also finished products, specialized alloys, superconductor materials, compounds used in advanced battery technology. At the back of the room, she found filing cabinets. Inside, organized with obsessive care, were Marcus's complete records. Not just production logs, but his entire research process. Patents he'd filed and apparently had approved for bioengineered organisms and extraction processes. Market analysis showing rare earth prices over the past 2 decades. Contracts with specialty material processors. Letters from technology companies expressing interest in purchasing refined elements. And financial records. Bank statements for accounts Elena didn't know existed. Investment portfolios. Assets that Marcus had accumulated but never touched, letting them grow while he lived in a cheap Seattle apartment and ate ramen noodles for dinner. Elena read through the statements with growing disbelief. Her father had been selling his materials just very quietly, very carefully, through intermediaries and shell companies and distribution networks that kept his identity hidden. The accounts showed balances that made her earlier calculations seem quaint. Primary offshore account, $127,400,000 secondary investment account, $89,200,000 material inventory on-site, at current market prices $233 million. Total, $449,600,000. $449 million. Elena's knees buckled. She grabbed the nearest shelf for support, the cold metal biting into her palm. The numbers didn't make sense. They couldn't be real. No one accumulated that kind of wealth without anyone knowing. No one ran a facility like this in complete secrecy for 15 years. But the evidence surrounded her. The tanks still glowing with bioluminescent organisms. The filtration systems still processing thousands of gallons of seawater per hour. The storage room filled with materials worth more than most people saw in 100 lifetimes. Her father, the man she'd resented for choosing research over family, had built something extraordinary, and he'd left it all to her. Elena sat down on the floor of the storage room, surrounded by containers of rare earth elements worth millions of dollars, and finally let herself cry. Not from joy or relief, from the overwhelming weight of possibility, of responsibility, of choice. Everything had changed. Yesterday she'd been homeless, desperate, down to her last few dollars. Today she was what? Wealthy beyond imagination. Owner of a facility that could generate millions per month if properly operated. Inheritor of a fortune that her father had built alone and in secret. She thought about Sofia sleeping upstairs, about the apartment in Portland they'd been evicted from, about the Honda Civic that had been their home for 4 months, about the choices she'd made and the choices she'd been forced to make and the crushing weight of poverty that had defined every decision. All of it gone in an instant, erased by a discovery so impossible it felt like fiction. But fiction didn't have transaction records and bank statements and patent certificates. Fiction didn't smell like salt and chemicals and the peculiar sweetness of bioluminescent organisms engineered to do the impossible. This was real. This was hers. And Elena had absolutely no idea what to do with it. She spent the rest of the night reading Marcus's files. Not the financial records. Those were too overwhelming, but the research documentation. His notes, his observations, his careful tracking of organism behavior and production efficiency, and the thousands of small adjustments he'd made over 15 years. The work was brilliant, genuinely brilliant. Marcus had solved problems that the entire scientific community said were insoluble. He'd created organisms that could extract and concentrate rare earth elements from seawater with efficiency that rivaled industrial processing plants. He'd done it alone, in secret, funding the work himself from the profits it generated. And he documented everything. Every genetic modification, every environmental condition, every variable that affected production. He'd left a complete blueprint for operating the facility, for maintaining the organisms, for harvesting and processing the elements they produced. It was a gift. Not just the money, but the knowledge. Everything Elena would need to continue the work, or shut it down, or sell it, or do whatever she decided was right. Near the bottom of one filing drawer, Elena found a letter. Not sealed in an envelope, just a single piece of paper folded once, with Elena written on the outside in Marcus's handwriting. Her hand shook as she opened it. "My dear daughter," it began, "if you're reading this, I'm gone. And if you found this room, you've also found my life's work. I won't insult your intelligence by asking forgiveness. I know I failed as a father. I chose this research over you and your mother. I told myself it was important, that I was doing something that mattered more than family dinners and school plays and being present for your childhood. I was wrong. The work mattered. It still matters. But not more than you. Never more than you. I realized that too late to fix what I'd broken. Your mother wouldn't speak to me after the divorce. You were right not to. I abandoned you both for test tubes and specimens and the ego of thinking I could solve problems no one else could touch. But I did solve them. The organisms in these tanks can extract rare earth elements from seawater indefinitely. The process is sustainable, renewable, environmentally neutral. It could revolutionize rare earth production, reduce our dependence on ecologically destructive mining, provide materials essential for the green energy transition. I've patented the key innovations, but never implemented them commercially. I've accumulated wealth, but never spent it. Everything has been waiting for you. This facility, the research, the assets, they're yours now. You can continue the work or shut it down. Sell everything or give it away. I have no right to dictate what you do with it. But Elena, my brilliant daughter who I failed so completely, I want you to know something. I kept track of you. I knew you finished your doctorate. I knew you started teaching at Portland Community College. I knew when you had Sofia. I was proud of you. So proud. And ashamed that I had no right to be. I'm leaving you this not as compensation. Nothing could compensate for my failures. I'm leaving it because you're a scientist. You'll understand what I've built. You'll appreciate its significance. and you'll make better choices than I did about how to use it. Don't let this work consume you the way it consumed me. Don't choose specimens over people. Be the parent I wasn't. Be the scientist I could have been if I'd remembered that research is supposed to serve humanity, not replace it. I love you. I always have. I wish I'd been brave enough to show it. Your father, Marcus Reyes. Elena read the letter 3 times. Then she folded it carefully, held it against her chest, and let herself grieve for the father she'd lost twice. Once to his obsession, once to death, and for the relationship they'd never had but might have, if time had been different, if choices had been different, if he'd been different. The first rays of sunrise were filtering through the underground chamber's ventilation system when Elena finally climbed the stairs. Sofia was still sleeping. Elena stood in the doorway of the residential apartment, watching her daughter's chest rise and fall, peaceful in a way she hadn't been in months. They had a home now, a strange, impossible home built on research and secrecy and one man's obsessive drive to prove the world wrong. But a home. They had wealth that would change everything. That would give Sofia every opportunity Elena had feared she'd never be able to provide. That would let Elena make choices based on what was right instead of what was possible. And they had responsibility. Marcus had left her more than money. He'd left her a legacy, a technology that could genuinely matter, and the choice of what to do with it. Elena thought about the parking lots, about the cold, about Sofia coughing in the back seat and asking when they could go home, about the crushing weight of poverty that made every decision a calculation of survival. She thought about the organisms glowing in their tanks below, about the science that was genuinely revolutionary, about the fact that rare earth mining was one of the most environmentally destructive industries on the planet, and Marcus had created an alternative that worked. And she made a decision. They would stay. She would continue the research, not the way Marcus had, alone, secret, consumed by obsession, but properly, openly, as something that could actually help solve real problems. But first, they needed help. Professional help. The kind that understood rare earth markets and patent law and how to transform a secret facility into a legitimate operation. Elena pulled out her phone. 1 bar of signal, barely enough. She composed an email to Dr. Jennifer Kawamoto, her dissertation advisor from graduate school. The woman who'd encouraged Elena to pursue marine biology even when funding disappeared and jobs were scarce. Dr. Kawamoto, she typed, I need your advice about a research facility I've inherited. It's producing rare earth elements using bioengineered marine organisms. I know that sounds impossible. I thought so too, but it's real, and I need help figuring out what to do with it. Can we talk? She hit send before she could second-guess herself. Then she put the phone down and went to wake Sofia. Good morning, baby. How did you sleep? Sofia blinked awake slowly, taking a moment to remember where they were. The bed was warm. I didn't wake up cold. That's good, sweetie. That's really good. Mama, are we going to stay here? Elena thought about the question, about the tanks glowing below them, about the letter in her pocket, about choices and responsibility and the weight of impossible gifts. Yes, baby. I think we're going to stay here. Even though it's weird and smells funny and has broken windows? Elena smiled. We'll fix the windows. We'll clean everything. We'll make it less weird. It'll take time, but we'll make it home. Sofia considered this seriously, the way 8-year-olds do when processing big changes. Will I have my own room? Yes. You'll have your own room. Can we paint it? Any color you want. Even purple? Even purple. Sofia grinned, the first genuine smile Elena had seen in weeks. Okay then, I guess we can stay. They spent the morning exploring the facility properly. In daylight, with electricity working, the place looked less threatening and more manageable. Broken windows could be replaced, rest to be cleaned. The structural bones were solid. Marcus had maintained those at least. Elena found supplies in a storage room. Cleaning products, basic tools, even some canned food that was expired but probably still safe. Marcus had stocked the place for long-term occupation, even if he'd never actually stayed here for more than a few days at a time. They started with a residential apartment. Elena taught Sofia how to clean windows and dust shelves and make a space feel like it belonged to them. They worked together, and Sofia sang while she wiped down surfaces, and for a few hours it felt almost normal. Elena's phone buzzed. Email notification. Dr. Kawamoto had responded. Elena, I've been wondering about you. Of course we can talk. This sounds fascinating and honestly concerning. Call me when you have time. And congratulations on the inheritance, even if it comes with complications. You deserve something good after everything. JK. Elena felt tears pricking her eyes again. Someone believed her. Someone was willing to help. She called immediately. Dr. Kawamoto answered on the second ring. Elena, tell me everything. So she did. She explained the facility, the organisms, the production logs, the storage room filled with refined elements, the accounts with numbers that didn't seem real. She described Marcus's letter and his research documentation and the patents he'd filed. Dr. Kawamoto listened without interrupting, which Elena appreciated. When she finished, there was a long silence. Elena, if even half of what you're describing is real, this is possibly the most significant advancement in rare earth production in 50 years. Do you understand that? I think so. I'm still processing. You need legal help immediately. Patent lawyers, tax lawyers, environmental lawyers. This isn't something you can navigate alone. I don't have money for lawyers. Yes, you do. You have millions. Use some of it. And Elena, you need to secure that facility. If word gets out about what you have before you've established legal ownership and proper security, you're going to have problems. Big problems. Elena looked around the facility's broken windows and rusted walls. What kind of problems? Industrial espionage, corporate theft, legal challenges from people claiming your father stole research or technology. You're sitting on something worth hundreds of millions. People have killed for less. The words made Elena's stomach drop. She'd been thinking about science and legacy and her father's gift. She hadn't thought about danger. What should I do first? Document everything. Photograph the facility, the organisms, the storage room. Print copies of the financial records and research files. Store them somewhere off-site. Then find a lawyer. I can recommend someone in Portland. And start establishing legal ownership of everything properly. They talked for another hour. Dr. Kawamoto connected Elena with Dr. Michael Chun, a patent attorney who specialized in biotechnology, and with Ruth Morrison, an environmental lawyer who understood marine research facilities. Both of them agreed to consult. Both of them asked for the same retainer, $25,000 each. $25,000. Elena had $37 in her checking account, but she had access to Marcus's accounts now, if she could figure out how to reach them. That afternoon, while Sofia napped, Elena went through Marcus's financial files more carefully. She found account numbers, routing information, passwords written in code that took her an hour to decipher. Marcus had been paranoid about security, but he'd also left breadcrumbs for someone smart enough to follow them. She accessed the primary offshore account using Marcus's laptop and the information she decoded. The balance showed $127,423,691.42. Elena transferred $100,000 to her personal checking account. It felt surreal, clicking buttons and watching numbers change. Money that was hers now, but didn't feel real. An hour later, her bank sent a fraud alert. She called them, explained she'd inherited assets, provided documentation, and after a tense conversation with 3 different supervisors, they released the hold. $100,000 in her checking account. More money than she'd made in 3 years of teaching. And it was less than 0.1% of what she now owned. She paid the lawyer's retainers immediately. Then she transferred another $50,000 to accessible funds for immediate needs, window repairs, facility maintenance, food, and clothing for her and Sofia. That evening, she made spaghetti using pasta she found in the storage room and sauce from a can. They ate at the small table in the residential apartment, and Sofia told stories about school friends she missed and asked if they could get a dog now that they had a real house. Maybe, Elena said. Let's get settled first. That's what you always say when you mean no. Elena smiled. This time I mean maybe. We have space here, and a dog would be nice company. Sofia's eyes widened. Really? You mean it? I mean it. When things are more stable, we'll look at shelters. After Sofia went to bed, Elena returned to the underground chamber. The organisms glowed softly in their tanks, processing seawater, extracting minerals, continuing the work Marcus had engineered them to do. She approached one of the tanks and pressed her hand against the glass. Inside, a colony of modified coral pulsed with bioluminescent light. It was beautiful in an alien way, life engineered for purpose, functioning exactly as designed. Marcus had spent 15 years perfecting this. 15 years alone, obsessed, choosing research over everything else. It had cost him his family, his relationship with his daughter, any semblance of normal human connection. But it had also created something genuinely important. Something that could change how humanity produced materials essential for modern technology. Something that could reduce environmental destruction and create sustainable alternatives. Elena thought about Marcus's letter, about his regret, about his warning not to let the work consume her. She wouldn't. She had Sofia to protect, and she'd learned from her father's mistakes. But she could also honor what he'd built. She could take his research and do something meaningful with it. The next morning, Dr. Chun and Ruth Morrison arrived at the facility together. Both of them looked skeptical when they saw the rusted exterior and broken windows. "This is it?" Dr. Chun asked. "This is the facility?" "Come inside," Elena said. "I'll show you." She led them through the residential area and labs, down to the underground chamber. When they saw the tanks with their glowing organisms, both lawyers stopped walking. "My God," Ruth whispered. "It's real." Elena spent 3 hours walking them through everything. The organisms, the extraction process, the production logs, the storage room filled with refined elements. She showed them Marcus's patents, his research documentation, his financial records. Dr. Chun examined the patents carefully. "These are legitimately filed. Already approved. Your father did this right, at least legally. You own this technology, free and clear." "What about the environmental permits?" Ruth asked. "Operating a facility like this requires state and federal oversight." Elena showed her the files. Marcus had obtained every necessary permit, renewed them annually, filed environmental impact assessments. He'd operated completely within the law, just very quietly. He was paranoid about being shut down, Elena explained. So he made sure everything was documented and approved. He just never told anyone what he was actually producing. Ruth shook her head in amazement. I've never seen anything like this. The environmental impact is negligible. The technology is revolutionary. If you wanted to scale this up, you could be producing rare earth elements in quantities that would genuinely affect global markets. What would that take? Elena asked. More tanks, more organisms, more space. But the process is proven, and the demand is enormous. China controls 80% of global rare earth production. Any alternative source, especially one that's environmentally sustainable, would be incredibly valuable. Dr. Chun was calculating on his phone. Based on current production levels and market prices, this facility is generating approximately $3.2 million per month in refined materials. If you scaled up by a factor of 10, you'd be looking at $30 million plus per month. That's $360 million annually. The numbers made Elena dizzy. I don't know how to run a company that size. You don't have to do it alone, Ruth said. You hire people. You build a team. You let experts handle operations while you focus on the science and strategic direction. Dr. Chin nodded. But first, we need to establish your legal position formally. Transfer all assets into your name officially. Set up a corporate structure to protect you from liability. File updated patents with you as the inheritor of Marcus's work. And most importantly, secure this facility properly. You need real security, not just locks and cameras. Over the next 2 weeks, Elena's life became a whirlwind of legal documents and strategic planning. Dr. Chin helped her establish Tidemark Biominerals LLC, with Elena as sole owner and CEO. All of Marcus's assets transferred into the company's name. The patents were updated. Environmental permits were renewed, with Elena listed as primary operator. Ruth Morrison handled the environmental regulatory side, working with the Oregon Department of Environmental Quality and the EPA to ensure everything was properly documented. Surprisingly, both agencies were enthusiastic about the facility once they understood what it was doing. Rare earth mining is an environmental catastrophe, the EPA inspector told Elena during a site visit. If your process can produce these elements without strip mining and toxic waste, we want to help you succeed. The inspector examined the organisms, reviewed the production data, took water sample from the discharge to verify it was clean. Everything checked out. The facility was operating well within every environmental standard. Dr. Reyes, you've inherited something remarkable. Your father was, well, he was brilliant and apparently very secretive. But this technology could genuinely make a difference. Elena hired security next, a company out of Portland that specialized in protecting research facilities. They installed proper fencing around the property, cameras at every access point, motion sensors, and a security team that rotated shifts to ensure 24/7 coverage. She hired a property manager to handle facility maintenance. The broken windows were replaced. Rust was treated and painted over. The buildings began to look less abandoned and more functional. And she hired staff. Dr. Sarah Kim, a marine biologist who'd been laid off from the NOAA lab in Newport. Marcus Rivera, an engineer with experience in aquaculture systems. Jennifer Zhao, who had a PhD in material science and had spent 5 years working for a rare earth mining company before quitting because she couldn't stomach the environmental destruction. Elena offered them salaries double what they'd been making in their previous positions. She showed them the facility, the organisms, the production data. All of them understood immediately what they were looking at. This is going to change everything, Sarah said, staring at the glowing tanks. If this technology becomes widely available. That's the plan, Elena said. Eventually. First, we need to make sure we can operate sustainably at current levels. Then we'll think about scaling up. Sofia adjusted to their new life with the resilience children have when their basic needs are finally met. Elena enrolled her in the small elementary school in Ocean View, the nearest town, 8 miles north. Sofia made friends. She joined the after-school art program. She started smiling again in a way that felt genuine rather than forced. They painted Sofia's room purple. They adopted a dog, a 3-year-old lab, mix named Pebbles from the local shelter. They bought furniture and filled the apartment with personal touches that made it feel like home. At night, Elena would sometimes stand on the dock outside the facility and watch the Pacific Ocean crash against the rocks. The same ocean that fed her father's organisms. The same water that was slowly, steadily being processed through the tanks below, yielding materials that would power electric cars and wind turbines and smartphones. Marcus had built something important. He'd just built it alone, in secret, at the cost of everything else in his life. Elena was determined to do it differently. She would honor the science without letting it consume her. She would build a company that mattered without sacrificing her humanity in the process. She would be the parent Marcus wasn't, and the scientist he could have been if he'd remembered that research was supposed to serve people, not replace them. That was the promise she made to herself, standing on a dock in the Oregon cold, watching waves that held minerals and possibilities and the strange, glowing legacy of a father she'd barely known. Tomorrow would bring new challenges. But tonight, Sofia was safe and warm. They had a home. They had a future. And somewhere in the tanks below, organisms glowed softly, doing the impossible work they'd been designed to do, turning seawater into fortune one molecule at a time. The letter arrived on a Tuesday morning in late March, 3 months after Elena had taken possession of the facility. Sofia was at school. The new staff was working in the labs below. Elena was in her office, Marcus's old office, really, which she'd cleaned and reorganized but still felt haunted by his presence, when a security guard brought in the day's mail. Most of it was routine. Supply invoices, equipment catalogs, permit renewal notices. But one envelope stood out. Heavy, cream-colored paper. Expensive. The return address was a law firm in San Francisco. Whitmore, Caldwell and Associates. Elena opened it with a letter opener Marcus had left in the desk drawer. The blade was silver, tarnished with age, engraved with his initials. The letter inside was formal, legalistic, threatening in the way that only lawyer letters could be. "Dear Dr. Reyes," it began, "we represent Dr. Harold Vance, former research partner of Dr. Marcus Reyes. Our client has recently become aware that Marcus Reyes passed away in December and that certain research materials and intellectual property may have been transferred to you as his heir. Dr. Vance wishes to inform you that he holds legitimate claim to 50% ownership of all bioengineering research and related technologies developed during his partnership with your father, specifically including, but not limited to, rare earth extraction methodologies using genetically modified marine organisms. Partnership documentation will be provided upon request. We ask that you cease all operations using disputed intellectual property immediately and contact our office within 10 business days to discuss equitable distribution of assets. Failure to respond will result in legal action. Sincerely, Robert Caldwell, partner, Whitmore, Caldwell and Associates." Elena read the letter 3 times, feeling her stomach twist tighter with each pass. Partnership? Her father had worked alone. Every document she'd found indicated solo research, solo patents, solo everything. She called Dr. Chun immediately. "I received a letter from another lawyer, someone claiming partnership rights to Marcus's research." Chen's voice sharpened. "Read it to me, word for word." Elena did. When she finished, Chen was silent for a long moment. "This is a shakedown, almost certainly, but we need to take it seriously. Do you have any documentation of a partnership between Marcus and this Harold Vance? I've never heard the name before. Look through Marcus's files. Everything. If there was a partnership, there will be records. If there wasn't, we need to prove it definitively before they file suit." Elena spent the next 6 hours going through every file, every drawer, every box of Marcus's records. She found grants he'd applied for in the 1990s. She found correspondence with other scientists. She found rejection letters from journals and acceptance letters from patent offices. And she found, buried in a box labeled Early Research, 1985 to 1992, a folder marked Vance Partnership Dissolution. Inside were documents that made her blood run cold. A partnership agreement dated 1987 between Marcus Reyes and Harold Vance for the purpose of investigating bioengineered solutions to rare earth element extraction from seawater. The agreement specified shared intellectual property rights, shared financial investment, and equal ownership of any resulting patents or technologies. But there were also dissolution documents dated 1992, a legal settlement in which Vance agreed to relinquish all claims to the research in exchange for $150,000 in acknowledgement in any resulting publications. The document was signed by both men, notarized, and filed with the California Secretary of State. Elena photographed every page and sent them to Dr. Chun. He called back within an hour. "This is good. Very good. The dissolution agreement is clear and legally binding. Vance has no claim. Then why is he coming after me now? Because he thinks you won't know about the dissolution. Or because he's desperate and hoping you'll settle rather than fight. Or because he's been stewing about this for 30 years and sees your father's death as an opportunity to reopen old wounds. What do I do?" We respond firmly. We show them the dissolution agreement. We make it clear you're prepared to defend your rights. And we document everything in case this goes to court. Dr. Chun drafted a response. It was polite but unyielding. It referenced the 1992 dissolution agreement, included copies of the relevant documents, and stated clearly that Elena had no intention of negotiating rights that her father had legally secured 30 years ago. They sent it certified mail, return receipt requested. 2 weeks later, Harold Vance himself showed up at the facility. Elena was working in the underground chamber, checking organism health and collecting samples when the security guard called down. "Dr. Reyes, there's a man at the gate insisting on seeing you. Says his name is Harold Vance. Should I send him away?" Elena's first instinct was yes, but her scientific training overrode it. "Bring him to the main building. I'll meet him in the conference room." She climbed the stairs, washed her hands, and composed herself. Whatever Vance wanted, she needed to handle it professionally. The man waiting in the conference room was in his early 70s. Thin, almost gaunt, with silver hair and eyes that held the sharp intelligence of someone who'd spent a lifetime in research. He wore an expensive suit that had seen better days and carried a worn leather briefcase. He stood when Elena entered. "Dr. Reyes, thank you for seeing me. Dr. Vance, I'm surprised you came in person. Letters are easy to ignore. I wanted you to understand that this isn't just about money or legal claims. This is about justice." Elena remained standing. The dissolution agreement was clear. You relinquished all rights to the research in 1992. Under duress. Vance's voice hardened. "Marcus forced me out. He had more funding, better connections. I couldn't compete. The $150,000 was a fraction of what the research was worth even then. You signed the agreement voluntarily. It was notarized. I signed because I had no choice. Marcus controlled everything. He made sure of that." Vance pulled a folder from his briefcase. "But I kept records. Original research notes showing my contributions. Data I collected. Organisms I cultured. The foundation of everything Marcus built was my work as much as his." Elena took the folder and examined its contents. Lab notebooks from 1987 to 1991. Handwriting that wasn't Marcus's. Experimental protocols, observations, data tables. All of it showed genuine scientific work. "This proves you did research," Elena said carefully. "It doesn't prove you own the results. It proves I was an equal partner. That Marcus stole what should have been ours together." Elena set the folder down. "Dr. Vance, I'm sorry if you feel my father wronged you. But legal agreements exist for a reason. You signed away your rights 30 years ago. I can't undo that." Vance's face darkened. "So you just want to hide behind technicalities while you profit from my work?" "It's not hiding behind technicalities. It's respecting legal contracts. Your father was a thief. He took my ideas, my organisms, my years of work, and he pushed me out the moment it became profitable." Elena felt her own anger rising. "My father spent 20 years perfecting this research after you left. He built this facility alone. He solved problems that the entire scientific community said were insoluble. Whatever you contributed early on, he earned his success. He earned it with my foundation." Vance was shouting now. "The genetic modifications, the selection pressure techniques, the culture methods, those were mine. Marcus just had the money and connections to scale them up." The security guard appeared in the doorway. "Everything okay, Dr. Reyes?" Elena nodded. "We're fine. Dr. Vance was just leaving." Vance grabbed his briefcase. "You'll hear from my lawyers. And this time, we won't settle quietly. I'll make sure everyone knows what Marcus did. I'll make sure the whole world understands that Tidemark Biominerals is built on stolen research." He stormed out. Elena stood in the conference room, hands shaking, feeling the weight of new problems she hadn't anticipated. She called Dr. Chen again, explained what had happened, sent him photos of Vance's research notebooks. "This complicates things," Chen admitted. "The notebooks show he did legitimate work, even with the dissolution agreement. If he can prove his contributions were foundational, he might have a case for some compensation." "How much compensation?" "That's what worries me. If this goes to trial, if a jury decides Marcus really did steal from a partner, they could award damages. Potentially significant damages." "How significant?" Chen sighed. "Worst case, they could order you to share profits from the technology. If they decide Vance's contributions were essential, they might say he deserves 50% of everything the technology has generated." Elena did the math quickly. 50% of $449 million was $224 million. "I don't have that kind of money liquid," she said. "Most of the value is in inventory and equipment and the facility itself. Then we need to settle before trial. Offer him something substantial enough to make litigation seem too risky." "How much?" $5 million. Maybe 10. Enough that he can live comfortably, fund his own research if he wants. Not enough to bankrupt you, but enough to acknowledge his contribution." Elena thought about Vance's face in the conference room, the bitterness that had been aging in him for 3 decades. "I don't think he wants money. I think he wants revenge. Then we prepare for court and hope we can convince a jury that legal agreements matter more than perceived injustice." The lawsuit was filed 3 weeks later. Vance versus Reyes in federal court in Oregon. The complaint was extensive, detailed, and built a narrative that Marcus had systematically stolen from his partner, pushed him out of the research, and profited from work that should have been shared. The media picked up the story immediately. Rare earth breakthrough built on stolen research, the Portland Tribune asked. Former partner claims tech billionaire's daughter inherited illegal profits, announced the San Francisco Chronicle. Tech billionaire's daughter. The label made Elena want to laugh and cry simultaneously. 3 months ago, she'd been homeless. Now she was painted as an heiress defending ill-gotten wealth. Reporters showed up at the facility. Elena refused all interviews on advice from Dr. Chun. The security guards turned them away, but cameras captured footage of the buildings, the fencing, the signs marking it as private property. Tidemark Biominerals became a story. The mysterious facility on the Oregon coast. The technology that could revolutionize rare earth production. The legal battle between a forgotten partner and the daughter who inherited everything. Elena set the folder down. Dr. Vance, I'm sorry if you feel my father wronged you, but legal agreements exist for a reason. You signed away your rights 30 years ago. I can't undo that. Vance's face darkened. So you're just going to hide behind technicalities while you profit from my work? It's not hiding behind technicalities. It's respecting legal contracts. Your father was a thief. He took my ideas, my organisms, my years of work, and he pushed me out the moment it became profitable. Elena felt her own anger rising. My father spent 20 years perfecting this research after you left. He built this facility alone. He solved problems that the entire scientific community said were insoluble. Whatever you contributed early on, he earned his success. He earned it with my foundation. Vance was shouting now. The genetic modifications, the selection pressure techniques, the culture methods, those were mine. Marcus just had the money and connections to scale them up. The security guard appeared in the doorway. Everything okay, Dr. Reyes? Elena nodded. We're fine. Dr. Vance was just leaving. Vance grabbed his briefcase. You'll hear from my lawyers. And this time, we won't settle quietly. I'll make sure everyone knows what Marcus did. I'll make sure the whole world understands that Tidemark Biominerals is built on stolen research. He stormed out. Elena stood in the conference room, hands shaking, feeling the weight of new problems she hadn't anticipated. She called Dr. Chun again, explained what had happened, sent him photos of Vance's research notebooks. This complicates things, Chun admitted. The notebooks show he did legitimate work, even with the dissolution agreement. If he can prove his contributions were foundational, he might have a case for some compensation. How much compensation? That's what worries me. If this goes to trial, if a jury decides Marcus really did steal from a partner, they could award damages. Potentially significant damages. How significant? Chun sighed. Worst case, they could order you to share profits from the technology. If they decide Vance's contributions were essential, they might say he deserves 50% of everything the technology has generated. Elena did the math quickly. 50% of $449 million was $224 million. I don't have that kind of money liquid, she said. Most of the value is in inventory and equipment and the facility itself. Then we need to settle before trial. Offer him something substantial enough to make litigation seem too risky. How much? 5 million. Maybe 10. Enough that he can live comfortably, fund his own research if he wants. Not enough to bankrupt you, but enough to acknowledge his contribution. Elena thought about Vance's face in the conference room, the bitterness that had been aging in him for 3 decades. I don't think he wants money. I think he wants revenge. Then we prepare for court and hope we can convince a jury that legal agreements matter more than perceived injustice. The lawsuit was filed 3 weeks later. Vance versus Reyes in federal court in Oregon. The complaint was extensive, detailed, and built a narrative that Marcus had systematically stolen from his partner, pushed him out of the research, and profited from work that should have been shared. The media picked up the story immediately. Rare earth breakthrough built on stolen research, the Portland Tribune asked. Former partner claims tech billionaire's daughter inherited illegal profits, announced the San Francisco Chronicle. Tech billionaire's daughter. The label made Elena want to laugh and cry simultaneously. 3 months ago, she'd been homeless. Now she was painted as an heiress defending ill-gotten wealth. Reporters showed up at the facility. Elena refused all interviews on advice from Dr. Chun. The security guards turned them away, but cameras captured footage of the buildings, the fencing, the signs marking it as private property. Tidemark Biominerals became a story. The mysterious facility on the Oregon coast. The technology that could revolutionize rare earth production. The legal battle between a forgotten partner and the daughter who inherited everything. Dr. Vance, did anyone threaten you? Did anyone force you to sign? Marcus gave me no other choice. But he didn't threaten you. He didn't force you. He made an offer, and you accepted it freely. Vance's jaw tightened. It wasn't free if my only alternative was losing everything. Dr. Vance, after 1992, did you continue researching rare earth extraction? I know. I moved on to other projects. Why? Because Marcus controlled all the funding in that space. He made sure no one else could get support. Dr. Chin pulled up a document on the courtroom screen. This is a grant proposal you submitted to the National Science Foundation in 1994, 2 years after the dissolution. The title is Novel Approaches to Bioremediation of Heavy Metals. Is that your work? Yes. Did you receive funding? Yes, but that wasn't rare earth research. Dr. Vance, I'm asking because you testified that you couldn't continue your work. But this proposal shows you did continue working in related fields. You just chose different applications. Vance shifted uncomfortably. It wasn't the same. Did Marcus Reyes prevent you from researching rare earth extraction after 1992? He controlled the funding. Dr. Vance, please answer the question. Did Marcus Reyes legally prevent you from conducting research? No, not legally. Thank you. Now, regarding the technology that Tidemark Biominerals currently uses, have you examined the patents? Yes. And are the techniques described in those patents identical to the work you did in 1987 to 1991? Vance hesitated. The foundational principles are the same. Dr. Vance, I asked if they're identical. No, the specific implementations are different. In fact, Dr. Reyes developed multiple innovations after 1992 that made commercial production viable. Isn't that correct? Building on my foundation, but using techniques and modifications you never developed or published. Correct. Yes. So the technology that's currently generating profits is not the same technology you worked on in 1991. It's based on my work. Dr. Vance, many technologies are based on earlier research. That doesn't give every prior researcher ownership rights over later developments. You sign an agreement relinquishing your claims. Why should the court invalidate that agreement now? Vance's voice hardened. Because it was unjust. Because Marcus stole what should have been mine. That's not a legal argument, Dr. Vance. That's personal resentment. Objection. Vance's attorney was on his feet. Argumentative. Sustained, the judge said. Mr. Chun, move on. But the point had been made. The jury had seen Vance's bitterness, his inability to move past a decision made 3 decades ago. The trial lasted 3 weeks. Elena sat through all of it, listening to her father's life dissected, his research questioned, his choices debated by people who'd never met him. Expert witnesses testified on both sides. Some said Vance's early work was essential. Others said Marcus's later innovations were what mattered. The jury heard testimony about genetic engineering and organism culturing and the complexity of scaling laboratory results to industrial production. Elena took the stand on the final day. Vance's attorney questioned her aggressively. Dr. Reyes, when you inherited this facility, did you know about Dr. Vance's contributions? No, I'd never heard his name. Did your father ever mention him? Not that I remember. Does that seem suspicious to you? That your father would completely erase a former partner from his history? Dr. Chen objected. Speculation. Withdrawn. Dr. Reyes, you've profited significantly from this technology. Do you believe Dr. Vance deserves compensation for his contributions? Elena chose her words carefully. I believe the dissolution agreement was legal and binding. But I also believe that science builds on previous work. If Dr. Vance made genuine contributions, those should be acknowledged. Acknowledge how? With money, with recognition, with proper citation in publications, with the respect that all scientists deserve for their work, but not with financial compensation. The legal system will determine what's appropriate. I'm prepared to accept that decision. It was the truth. Whatever the jury decided, Elena would live with it. She wouldn't fight the law to protect wealth she hadn't earned. The jury deliberated for 2 days. Elena spent those days at the facility trying to work, trying to focus on anything other than the waiting. Sofia could sense her anxiety and stayed close, offering hugs and drawings and the wordless comfort of presence. The call came on a Thursday afternoon. Verdict reached. Elena drove to the courthouse with Dr. Chun. They sat in the courtroom while the jury filed in. 12 faces, expressionless, giving nothing away. The judge asked for the verdict. The jury foreman stood. In the matter of Vance versus Reyes, we find in favor of the defendant. Elena's knees went weak. Dr. Chun gripped her arm to steady her. We find that the 1992 dissolution agreement was entered into voluntarily and legally. We find that Dr. Marcus Reyes did not commit fraud or theft of intellectual property. We find that Dr. Harold Vance has no claim to technology developed after the partnership was dissolved. Vance made a sound, half gasp, half sob. His attorney put a hand on his shoulder. The foreman continued. However, we do find that Dr. Vance's early contributions were significant and deserve recognition. We recommend, though we cannot require, that Dr. Reyes acknowledge these contributions in any future publications or patents derived from this research. The judge thanked the jury. The trial was over. Elena had won. Outside the courthouse, reporters swarmed. Dr. Chun handled them while Elena stood to the side, overwhelmed by relief and exhaustion and the strange emptiness of victory. Vance emerged from a side door. He looked broken, decades older than his age. He caught Elena's eye, and something passed between them. Not forgiveness, not reconciliation, but acknowledgement. Elena made a decision. She approached him while his attorney was distracted. Dr. Vance. He turned, wary. Come to gloat. No, I came to offer you something. I don't want your charity. It's not charity. The jury said your contributions deserve recognition. I agree. I'd like to offer you a consulting position at Tidemark Biominerals. Paid position. Help us refine the technology, document its history properly, ensure your work gets the credit it deserves. Vance stared at her. Why would you do that? Because you're right that science builds on previous work. Because my father did benefit from your contributions, even if he didn't owe you ownership. And because I need experts who understand this technology's history. I spent 3 months trying to destroy you in court. I know, but you're a good scientist, and good scientists shouldn't be wasted on bitterness. Vance's eyes filled with tears. I don't know what to say. Say you'll think about it. No pressure. The offer stands when you're ready. Elena walked away before he could respond. Dr. Chin caught up to her in the car. That was risky. He could use it against you if he appeals. I don't think he'll appeal. And if he does, I'll deal with it. But life's too short to make enemies of people who should be allies. They drove back to the facility in silence. Sofia was waiting with Dr. Kim, who'd stayed with her during the verdict. Sofia ran to Elena and threw her arms around her mother's waist. Did we win? Yes, baby. We won. Does that mean we get to keep our home? Elena knelt down to her daughter's level. Yes, we get to keep our home. That night, after Sofia was asleep, Elena walked down to the underground chamber. The organisms glowed softly in their tanks, oblivious to human dramas of ownership and justice and bitter partnership disputes. She thought about her father working here alone for 15 years, about Vance eaten alive by resentment for 3 decades, about how easily success could poison relationships if you let it. She'd won the legal battle. But she understood now that winning wasn't enough. She needed to build something better than Marcus had, something that honored all contributions, that created value without creating enemies, that pushed science forward without pushing people aside. Her phone buzzed. Email notification. She checked it absently. The message was from Harold Vance. Dr. Reyes, I've thought about your offer. I'd like to accept. Not because I need the money, though I do. Because I want to see this work continue properly. Because I spent too many years hating your father instead of doing science. And because you showed me more grace in defeat than I showed you in attack. When would you like me to start? Harold Vance. Elena smiled. She typed a response. Dr. Vance, Monday morning, 8 a.m. Welcome to Tidemark Biominerals. Elena. She sent it and felt something like hope. The work would continue. The science would advance. And maybe, just maybe, she was learning to do it better than the previous generation. August became September. The facility settled into routine. Staff arrived each morning, checked organisms, collected samples, refined materials, documented everything. Tidemark Biominerals was operating at full capacity, producing approximately $3.2 million per month in refined rare earth elements. Harold Vance integrated into the team surprisingly well. He brought expertise that even Marcus hadn't possessed, knowledge about early genetic modifications that could be refined further. He worked alongside Sarah Kim and Marcus Rivera, and slowly the bitterness that had defined him for decades began to fade. Elena watched him teaching a new technician about organism care one morning and realized he was smiling. Genuinely smiling, not the bitter grimace she'd seen in court. He's good with the new people, Sarah observed. Patient. Thorough. He's a good scientist. He just forgot that for a while. We all forget sometimes. Sarah pulled up a data file on her tablet. Speaking of remembering what matters, we've refined the extraction process for neodymium. Efficiency is up 17% over last month. Elena examined the data. This is excellent work. Have you documented the modifications? Fully documented. And I made sure to cite Vance's 1989 paper on organism selection pressure. His work actually was foundational for this improvement. He'll appreciate that. Investment offers had started arriving in July, after the trial ended. Venture capital firms wanted to fund expansion. Technology companies wanted exclusive supply contracts. The Department of Energy expressed interest in partnering to scale up production. Elena reviewed each offer carefully with her team. Some were genuine opportunities. Others were thinly veiled attempts to acquire the technology cheaply. The most interesting offer came from an unexpected source, the Confederated Tribes of Siletz Indians, whose historical territory included the Oregon coast where Tidemark sat. The tribal council chairman, David Martinez, called Elena directly. Dr. Reyes, we've been following your work with interest. Sustainable rare earth production aligns with our environmental values. We'd like to discuss partnership opportunities. Elena walked away before he could respond. Dr. Chin caught up to her in the car. That was risky. He could use it against you if he appeals. I don't think he'll appeal. And if he does, I'll deal with it. But life's too short to make enemies of people who should be allies. They drove back to the facility in silence. Sofia was waiting with Dr. Kim, who'd stayed with her during the verdict. Sofia ran to Elena and threw her arms around her mother's waist. Did we win? Yes, baby. We won. Does that mean we get to keep our home? Elena knelt down to her daughter's level. Yes, we get to keep our home. That night, after Sofia was asleep, Elena walked down to the underground chamber. The organisms glowed softly in their tanks, oblivious to human dramas of ownership and justice and bitter partnership disputes. She thought about her father working here alone for 15 years, about Vance eaten alive by resentment for 3 decades, about how easily success could poison relationships if you let it. She'd won the legal battle, but she understood now that winning wasn't enough. She needed to build something better than Marcus had, something that honored all contributions, that created value without creating enemies, that pushed science forward without pushing people aside. Her phone buzzed. Email notification. She checked it absently. The message was from Harold Vance. Dr. Reyes, I've thought about your offer. I'd like to accept. Not because I need the money, though I do. Because I want to see this work continue properly. Because I spent too many years hating your father instead of doing science. And because you showed me more grace in defeat than I showed you in attack. When would you like me to start? Harold Vance. Elena smiled. She typed a response. Dr. Vance, Monday morning, 8 a.m. Welcome to Tidemark Biominerals. Elena. She sent it and felt something like hope. The work would continue. The science would advance. And maybe, just maybe, she was learning to do it better than the previous generation. August became September. The facility settled into routine. Staff arrived each morning, checked organisms, collected samples, refined materials, documented everything. Tidemark Biominerals was operating at full capacity, producing approximately $3.2 million per month in refined rare earth elements. Harold Vance integrated into the team surprisingly well. He brought expertise that even Marcus hadn't possessed, knowledge about early genetic modifications that could be refined further. He worked alongside Sarah Kim and Marcus Rivera, and slowly the bitterness that had defined him for decades began to fade. Elena watched him teaching a new technician about organism care one morning and realized he was smiling. Genuinely smiling, not the bitter grimace she'd seen in court. He's good with the new people, Sarah observed. Patient, thorough. He's a good scientist. He just forgot that for a while. We all forget sometimes. Sarah pulled up a data file on her tablet. Speaking of remembering what matters, we've refined the extraction process for neodymium. Efficiency is up 17% over last month. Elena examined the data. This is excellent work. Have you documented the modifications? Fully documented. And I made sure to cite Vance's 1989 paper on organism selection pressure. His work actually was foundational for this improvement. He'll appreciate that. Investment offers had started arriving in July, after the trial ended. Venture capital firms wanted to fund expansion. Technology companies wanted exclusive supply contracts. The Department of Energy expressed interest in partnering to scale up production. Elena reviewed each offer carefully with her team. Some were genuine opportunities. Others were thinly veiled attempts to acquire the technology cheaply. The most interesting offer came from an unexpected source, the Confederated Tribes of Siletz Indians, whose historical territory included the Oregon coast where Tidemark sat. The tribal council chairman, David Martinez, called Elena directly. Dr. Reyes, we've been following your work with interest. Sustainable rare earth production aligns with our environmental values. We'd like to discuss partnership opportunities. What kind of partnership? Elena opened it carefully. Inside was a leather-bound notebook, Vance's original research journal from 1987, the one that had started everything. Harold, I can't accept this. This is your work. It's history now, and history belongs to whoever continues the work forward. That's you, Elena. You're doing what Marcus and I both failed to do. You're making this matter beyond our egos. Elena hugged him. The old man stiffened in surprise, then relaxed and hugged her back. Thank you, she whispered, for everything, for not giving up, even when you wanted to. Thank you for giving me a reason to stop being bitter. The new year arrived with clear skies and cold wind. Elena stood on the dock watching sunrise paint the Pacific in shades of orange and gold. Behind her, the facility hummed with activity. Staff arriving for the morning shift. Organisms being fed and monitored. Rare earth elements being extracted and refined and prepared for distribution to manufacturers who would use them to build electric vehicles and solar panels and wind turbines. Technology that would help transition away from fossil fuels. Technology that would reduce environmental destruction from traditional mining. Technology that her father had created, that Harold had helped start, that she was now scaling up to make a genuine difference. Her phone buzzed. Email from Dr. Kawamoto. Elena, I'm forwarding a request from a graduate student who wants to study your extraction process for her dissertation. Her name is Maya Torres. She's brilliant, passionate about marine conservation, and reminds me of you at that age. Would you consider taking her on as a visiting researcher? JK. Elena smiled. The work would continue beyond her, just as it had continued beyond Marcus. That was how science was supposed to work, knowledge building on knowledge, each generation adding to what came before. She typed a response. Yes. Tell her to contact me directly. We'll work something out. Elena. Sofia appeared on the dock, wrapped in her purple winter coat, Pebbles trotting beside her. Mama, are you coming in? You've been out here forever. Just thinking, baby. About what? Elena looked at her daughter, then back at the facility that had transformed their lives. About how strange life is. How you can lose everything and find something better. How the worst situations can become the best opportunities if you're willing to see them. That's deep, Mama. Elena laughed. Too deep for before coffee. Way too deep. They walked back together, mother and daughter and dog, toward the building that was now truly home. Behind them, the Pacific continued its eternal rhythm, waves bringing seawater that would become rare earth elements that would become technology that would help build a more sustainable future. And in the underground chamber, organisms glowed softly, doing the impossible work they'd been designed to do, transforming seawater into fortune and legacy and hope. Marcus Reyes had built this place out of obsession and isolation. Elena was rebuilding it on collaboration and purpose. The difference mattered. The difference changed everything. April arrived with unseasonable warmth. The cherry blossoms in Washington, D.C. were in full bloom when Elena and her team arrived for the National Academy of Sciences ceremony. Sofia stayed with Dr. Kawamoto back in Oregon, a school week she couldn't miss. But the rest of Tidemark's core staff made the trip. Sarah Kim, Marcus Rivera, Jennifer Zhao, and Harold Vance, all dressed in formal attire that felt strange after months of lab coats and work clothes. The ceremony was held in the Academy's Grand Auditorium, a space that whispered prestige and history. Portraits of past Nobel laureates lined the walls. The audience included some of the most accomplished scientists in the country. Elena sat in the front row, hands folded to stop them from shaking. The award in chemical sciences was one of the Academy's highest honors. She still couldn't quite believe they were here. The Academy president, Dr. Margaret Chun, took the podium. Her voice carried through the auditorium with practiced authority. This year's award in chemical sciences recognizes extraordinary innovation in sustainable materials production. Our laureates have developed a technology that addresses one of the most pressing environmental challenges of our time, the extraction of rare earth elements essential for clean energy technology. Dr. Chen outlined the traditional rare earth mining process, strip mining that destroyed landscapes, chemical processing that contaminated water supplies, an industry dominated by countries with minimal environmental oversight. But Dr. Elena Reyes and her team at Tidemark Biominerals have pioneered an entirely different approach. Using bioengineered marine organisms, they extract rare earth elements directly from seawater with minimal environmental impact. The technology is elegant, efficient, and scalable. It represents the kind of breakthrough that can genuinely change industries. The auditorium erupted in applause. Elena stood on shaking legs and walked to the stage. Dr. Chun presented her with a crystal award and a medal. They shook hands while cameras flashed. Then it was Elena's turn to speak. She prepared remarks, practiced them a dozen times. But standing at the podium, looking at hundreds of accomplished scientists, words she'd memorized felt inadequate. "Thank you," she began. "This honor means more than I can express. But I need to be honest about something. This technology wasn't my creation. It was my father's. Dr. Marcus Reyes spent 20 years developing the organisms and processes that make Tidemark possible. I inherited his work. What I've done is bring it out of secrecy and into practical application." She paused, gathering courage for what came next. "My father was brilliant but flawed. He chose research over family. He worked in isolation rather than collaboration. He accumulated wealth but never used it to help anyone. I spent years resenting him for those choices. When he died and left me his facility, I almost refused the inheritance because accepting it felt like forgiving what I couldn't forgive." The auditorium was silent. "But I've learned something important over the past year. Science isn't about the scientists. It's about what we create and how we use it. My father made terrible choices in his personal life, but he created something that matters. Refusing that gift because of his failures would have been its own failure." Elena looked directly at Harold Vance in the front row. "I also need to acknowledge Dr. Harold Vance, whose early research provided the foundation for everything my father built. Dr. Vance and my father had a partnership that ended badly. There was bitterness, resentment, legal battles. But Dr. Vance's contributions were real and important. This technology exists because of work he did 35 years ago. He deserves recognition for that. Vance's eyes were wet. He nodded once, a gesture of acknowledgement and forgiveness. Science builds on previous work, Elena continued. Every breakthrough stands on earlier discoveries. Every success requires collaboration, even when that collaboration is messy and complicated and spans decades. What Tidemar has accomplished belongs to everyone who contributed. My father, Dr. Vance, and the extraordinary team working there now. She raised the Crystal Award. This belongs to all of us. And the real work is just beginning. Thank you. The applause was thunderous. Elena returned to her seat, legs weak, heart pounding. Sarah Kim squeezed her hand. Harold Vance leaned over and whispered, "Thank you." After the ceremony, they were surrounded by people wanting to talk. Scientists asking technical questions about the organisms. Investors offering funding for expansion. Government officials inquiring about production capacity. A woman in her 60s approached Elena during a break in the reception. She had gray hair, pulled back severely, and eyes that held the sharp intelligence of lifelong academic work. "Dr. Reyes, I'm Dr. Judah Strauss from MIT. I knew your father slightly. We were at a conference together in 1995. Elena braced herself for criticism or judgment. Most people who'd known Marcus had complicated feelings about him. But Dr. Strauss smiled. He presented some preliminary data on bioengineered organisms for mineral extraction. The audience was skeptical, myself included. We told him it was impossible, that the concentrations were too low, that it would never scale. He listened politely and then continued working anyway. Marcus was stubborn in the best possible way. He was definitely stubborn. I wanted to tell you, what you've done with his work is remarkable. Not just the science, but the approach. Bringing in partners, sharing knowledge, prioritizing environmental impact. Marcus was brilliant, but secretive. You've taken his genius and made it generous. That's rare. That matters. Elena felt tears threatening. Thank you. That means a lot. Dr. Strauss handed her a business card. MIT is launching a new Center for Sustainable Materials Research. We'd love to partner with Tidemark. Not to take over or buy you out, but to collaborate. Help train the next generation of scientists in these techniques. Would you be interested? Very interested. Let's talk when I'm back in Oregon. The conversations continued for hours. By the time Elena escaped back to the hotel, she was exhausted but energized. The work they were doing mattered. People understood that. The scientific community was paying attention. She called Sofia before bed. "How was the ceremony, Mama?" "It was good, baby. A little overwhelming, but good." "Did you give a speech?" "I did. I talked about your grandfather and about how science requires lots of people working together. That's what Mrs. Patterson says in school. No one accomplishes anything alone." Elena smiled. "Mrs. Patterson is very wise." "How was your day?" "Good. Dr. Kawamoto took me to the aquarium. We saw jellyfish and octopuses and this really big shark. And Dr. Kawamoto told me about when you were a student and you were always asking questions." "I did ask a lot of questions." "She said that's how you became a good scientist. By being curious about everything." "That's true, baby. Stay curious, okay?" "Okay. Love you, Mama. Love you more." Elena hung up and lay in the hotel bed staring at the ceiling. A year ago, she'd been sleeping in a Honda Civic, terrified about the future, wondering how she'd protect her daughter. Now she was accepting scientific awards and partnering with MIT and building something that would outlast her. Life was strange. Impossibly, wonderfully strange. The flight back to Oregon departed early the next morning. Elena dozed during the journey. The Crystal Award safely packed in her carry-on bag. When they landed in Portland, Dr. Kawamoto and Sofia were waiting at the airport. Sofia ran to Elena and threw her arms around her mother's waist. "You're famous now. Dr. Kawamoto showed me articles about you." "Not famous, baby. Just doing work that people noticed." "Same thing," Sofia said confidently. Dr. Kawamoto smiled. "She's not wrong. The articles are everywhere. Science journals, mainstream media, even some technology blogs. Tidemark is getting serious attention. Is that good or bad? Both. Good because it validates the work. Bad because attention brings scrutiny. You'll need to be prepared for that. The scrutiny arrived faster than Elena anticipated. Within a week of the ceremony, 3 different news crews requested facility tours. The Department of Energy sent inspectors to verify production capacity. Environmental groups wanted to examine the organisms and ensure they weren't invasive species that could escape into wild populations. Elena handled it all with as much transparency as possible. She gave tours, answered questions, provided data. The organisms were genetically modified in ways that made them dependent on carefully controlled tank conditions. They couldn't survive in the open ocean. The facility operated under every relevant environmental permit. Production was real, documented, and growing. But not everyone was satisfied. In late May, a group called Citizens for Natural Resources began protesting outside the facility. About 20 people, mostly older residents from nearby towns, carrying signs reading "Stop Genetic Manipulation" and "Natural Resources, Not Manufactured." Elena went out to talk to them. The protest leader was a man in his 60s named Robert Hutchins. He regarded Elena with suspicion. "You're playing God with those organisms," he said, "twisting nature to serve profit." "We're using genetic engineering to solve a real problem," Elena replied. "Rare earth mining destroys landscapes. This process doesn't. You don't know what those organisms will do if they get into the ocean. You could be creating an ecological disaster. The organisms are engineered to be dependent on specific nutrients only available in controlled tanks. They can't survive in the wild." That's what scientists always say before something goes wrong. Elena understood his fear. She'd read enough science fiction to know how genetic engineering worried people. "What would make you feel safer about this?" Hutchins seemed surprised by the question. "Independent oversight. Not government regulators who get paid off, but real environmental experts who don't work for you. I can arrange that. The Confederated Tribes of Siletz are partners in Tidemark. They have environmental experts who monitor everything we do. Would you be willing to meet with them?" Hutchins considered. "Maybe, if they're really independent." Elena arranged a meeting for the following week. Chairman Martinez and the Tribal Environmental Director, Dr. Lisa Benton, came to the facility and met with the protesters. They walked through the monitoring protocols, the containment measures, the environmental impact assessments. "We take this seriously," Dr. Benton told them. "Our people have lived on this coast for thousands of years. We won't let anyone poison it. Tidemark's operations are cleaner than any mining operation you'll find anywhere." Slowly, the protests diminished. Not everyone was convinced, but most accepted that the environmental concerns were being addressed seriously. Elena learned an important lesson. Transparency built trust. People feared what they didn't understand. The more she could show them, the organisms, the processes, the safeguards, the less frightening it became. Summer brought the expansion project into full operation. The new facility opened in July with triple the tank capacity of the original. Production jumped to approximately $9.6 million per month. Tidemark hired 40 new employees, most from Oregon coastal communities that have been economically depressed for decades. The economic impact was undeniable. Ocean View, the nearest town, saw new businesses opening. The school district received donations that updated science labs. The local community college developed a marine biotechnology program, with Tidemark providing internships. Elena watched the ripple effects with satisfaction. This was what wealth should do: create opportunities, lift communities, make things better for everyone. But personal threats arrived in August. Elena was working late in her office when the security guard called. "Dr. Reyes, we've got a problem. Someone's tried to breach the facility perimeter on the north side. They triggered motion sensors and fled when the alarms went off." Elena's stomach dropped. Any idea who? No visual, but they left something behind. This something was a note written on cheap notebook paper and weighted down with a rock. The security guard brought it to Elena in a plastic evidence bag. The note was brief and threatening. Stop playing with nature or nature will stop you. You've been warned. Elena called the sheriff's department. Deputies came, took the note, examined the breach point. They found footprints, but no other evidence. Could be environmental activists, the deputy said. Could be someone trying to scare you for other reasons. We'll increase patrols, but Dr. Reyes, you should consider personal security. Elena had been avoiding that thought. Security for the facility, yes, but personal protection felt excessive, paranoid. Then Sofia came home from school the next day and said someone had been asking questions about her. What kind of questions? A man came to the playground during recess. He asked what my mom did for work and where we lived. Mrs. Patterson saw him and told him to leave, but it was weird. Elena's blood ran cold. Threatening the facility was one thing. Approaching her daughter was something else entirely. She hired personal security that afternoon, a team from a Portland firm that specialized in executive protection. 2 bodyguards who rotated shifts, always present but trying to remain unobtrusive. Sofia hated it at first. Why do I need guards? I'm not important. You're important to me, baby. And there are people who might want to scare me by scaring you. These guards make sure that doesn't happen. Is it because of the organisms? Partly. And because when you have something valuable, some people want to take it away. I don't like it. I know. I don't either. But it's necessary for now. The threats continued sporadically through September. Nothing serious enough to shut down operations, but enough to keep everyone on edge. Anonymous phone calls. Suspicious packages that turn out to be empty. Graffiti spray painted on the facility's fence reading, "Stop Bioterrorism." Elena refused to be intimidated. She increased security, installed better cameras, and kept working. But the stress was taking its toll. She wasn't sleeping well. She snapped at staff over minor issues. She found herself constantly checking over her shoulder, jumping at unexpected sounds. Harold Vance noticed. He found Elena in the lab one evening, past midnight, running tests that didn't need to be done immediately. "You're burning out," he said gently. "I'm fine." "You're not. I've seen this before. Watched it happen to Marcus. Watched it happen to myself during the lawsuit years. You're letting fear drive you." Elena set down the pipette she'd been holding. "What am I supposed to do? Someone's threatening my daughter. I can't just ignore that." "You're not ignoring it. You've taken appropriate precautions. But Elena, you're letting them win. You're giving them what they want: disruption, fear, distraction from the work. So what do I do? Keep living. Keep working. Keep showing Sofia that we don't let fear control us. And maybe take a day off occasionally. Remember what this is all for." Elena looked at the older man. He'd aged visibly since joining Tidemark, but in a good way. The bitterness had faded from his eyes. He stood straighter. He smiled more. "When did you become wise?" Vance laughed. "I'm not wise. I'm just old enough to recognize mistakes when I see them being repeated. Go home, Elena. Be with your daughter. The organisms will still be here tomorrow." Elena went home. She found Sofia doing homework at the kitchen table, Pebbles sleeping at her feet. The apartment was warm and safe and filled with evidence of normal life. Dishes in the sink, laundry folded on the couch, Sofia's artwork taped to the refrigerator. "Hey, baby, need help with homework?" Sofia looked up in surprise. "You're home early. I decided the work could wait." "What are you studying?" "Ocean ecosystems. We're learning about tide pools and the creatures that live in them." Elena smiled. "I know a little bit about that. Want to go see some tide pools this weekend? There are good ones about 5 miles from here." "Really?" "Just us. Just us. And the security guards, but they'll stay at a distance." "Okay, that will be fun." They went that Saturday. Low tide revealed rocky pools teeming with life. Sea anemones, starfish, hermit crabs, tiny fish darting between rocks. Sofia crouched beside a pool, watching a sea anemone's tentacles wave in the current. "Mama, is this what grandfather studied?" "Similar creatures, yes. He was interested in how marine organisms process minerals from seawater." "Did he ever bring you to tide pools when you were little?" Elena thought back. There had been a few trips, early in her childhood, before Marcus became completely consumed by his work. She remembered his patience teaching her to observe carefully, to notice patterns, to ask questions about what she saw. "A few times. He taught me to be curious about the ocean." Do you miss him? I miss the father he could have been, the one I remember from those early trips. But he chose a different path. Are you going to choose a different path than him? Elena looked at her daughter, wise beyond her 8 years. I'm trying to, baby. Every day, I'm trying to choose better. October brought unexpected news. The Department of Energy announced a major initiative to develop domestic rare earth production capabilities. They were offering grants and contracts to companies that could scale up sustainable extraction methods. Tidemark was the obvious candidate. Elena submitted a proposal for $200 million in federal funding to build 3 additional facilities along the Pacific coast. The proposal included partnerships with coastal tribal nations, commitments to environmental monitoring, and plans to train hundreds of workers in the new technology. The grant was approved in November. $200 million. Suddenly, Tidemark wasn't just a successful company. It was becoming an industry leader. With federal funding came federal attention. Security improved dramatically. FBI agents investigated the threats against the facility and tracked them to a small group of anti-technology extremists. 4 arrests were made. The threats stopped. Elena could finally breathe. The expansion accelerated. New facilities were planned for Washington and Northern California. Tidemark partnered with universities to establish research programs. The technology that Marcus had kept secret for 20 years was becoming a model for sustainable industrial production. By December, Tidemark employed over 200 people. Production had increased 20-fold from when Elena first inherited the facility. The company was valued at approximately $800 million. Elena transferred $100 million to a charitable foundation she established in Marcus's name. The foundation would fund marine conservation, support educational programs in coastal communities, and provide scholarships for students pursuing marine biology. It's what he should have done with the money while he was alive, she told Harold Vance. But better late than never. Christmas arrived with the same storms that had battered the coast a year earlier. But this time, Elena and Sofia watched from the warmth and safety of their apartment. The facility withstood the weather easily. The organisms continued their work, processing seawater, extracting minerals, generating wealth that was being used to build something meaningful. Sofia was 9 now, growing tall and confident. She decided she wanted to be a marine biologist like her mother. She spent hours in the facility watching organisms, asking questions, absorbing knowledge. On Christmas morning, they opened gifts together. Books for Sofia, art supplies, a new microscope she'd been wanting. For Elena, Sofia had made a drawing of the 2 of them standing on the dock, the facility behind them, organisms glowing in the windows. It's us, Sofia said. Our home, the place where we're safe. Elena framed it and hung it on her office wall. The National Academy ceremony felt like a lifetime ago, though it had been only 8 months. So much had changed. The company had grown. The technology had proven itself. Elena had transformed from a desperate homeless mother into someone running an operation that employed hundreds and generated millions. But the most important thing hadn't changed. She and Sofia were still together, still safe, still building a life. In late January, Elena received a call from Dr. Margaret Shun at the National Academy. Dr. Reyes, I'm calling with an invitation. The Academy is hosting a symposium on sustainable industrial biotechnology in March. We'd like you to give the keynote address. I'm honored. What's the focus? How bioengineering can solve environmental problems that traditional industry creates. Your work at Tidemark is the perfect example. We want you to talk about the science, yes, but also about the choices you've made, bringing in partners, sharing knowledge, prioritizing environmental impact over pure profit. I can do that. Excellent. And Dr. Reyes? Bring your daughter if you'd like. We're trying to inspire the next generation. Seeing a successful scientist who's also a parent matters. Elena agreed. She and Sofia flew to Washington in March. Sofia was nervous about the trip. Her first time flying somewhere fancy. Her first time seeing her mother speak to hundreds of scientists. The symposium was held at the National Academy's headquarters. Elena's keynote was scheduled for the final day. She spent the first 2 days attending talks, networking, introducing Sofia to scientists who took time to explain their work in ways a 9-year-old could understand. On the third day, Elena stood at the podium in front of 500 people. Sofia sat in the front row, dressed in her best clothes, watching with wide eyes. A year ago, Elena began, I was homeless, living in a car with my daughter. I lost my job, lost my apartment, lost hope that things would get better. Then my father died and left me a research facility I didn't know existed. That facility contained technology worth hundreds of millions of dollars. She paused, letting the audience absorb the dramatic arc. This could be a story about luck, about stumbling into wealth. But I want to talk about what happens after you receive an impossible gift, about the choices you make with resources you didn't earn. Elena walked the audience through the past year, discovering Marcus's research, finding Harold Vance, and choosing reconciliation over continued bitterness, partnering with the Confederated Tribes of Silets rather than maximizing profit, establishing the charitable foundation, training workers, and investing in communities. My father accumulated wealth, but never used it to help anyone. He died alone, estranged from his family, having pushed away everyone who tried to get close. That's not success. That's tragedy. The technology he created was brilliant. The life he lived was empty. She looked directly at Sofia. I'm trying to do better, to build something that matters without sacrificing the people who matter most, to create wealth that actually improves lives rather than just accumulating in accounts, to remember that science is supposed to serve humanity. Elena's voice strengthened. We're at a turning point in how we produce materials essential for modern technology. We can continue strip mining, destroying landscapes, poisoning water, concentrating production in countries with minimal environmental oversight. Or we could develop alternatives, sustainable methods, distributed production, technologies that work with nature instead of against it. She pulled up a slide showing Tidemark facilities. This is possible. It's happening right now. And it's not just about rare earth elements. The principles apply to many industrial processes. If we're creative, if we're willing to try new approaches, if we prioritize environmental impact alongside economic return, we could transform how we make things. The final slide showed a photo of Sofia standing beside one of the glowing organism tanks. This is my daughter. She wants to be a marine biologist. In 20 years, she'll be inheriting the world we create today. The industries we build, the technologies we develop, the choices we make about balancing profit and planet. I want her to inherit something better than what I received. Not just wealth, but wisdom. Not just success, but sustainability. That's the work ahead of us. That's what we owe the next generation. The applause was sustained, genuine. Elena returned to her seat beside Sofia, legs shaking. Sofia whispered, "That was really good, Mama." "Thank you, baby. Can we get ice cream after?" Elena laughed. "Yes, definitely ice cream." After the symposium, they spent 2 days touring Washington, the Smithsonian museums, the National Zoo, the monuments illuminated at night. Sofia absorbed everything with the boundless curiosity Elena had tried to encourage. On their last evening, they sat on a bench near the Lincoln Memorial, watching the sunset paint the sky. "Mama, do you think Grandfather would be proud of what you've done?" Elena considered the question carefully. "I think he'd be proud of the science. I don't know if he'd understand the rest. The partnerships, the sharing, the focus on helping communities. He saw research as something separate from people. I see it as something that's supposed to serve people." "I think he'd be proud," Sofia said confidently. "You made his work matter. We made it matter, baby. You're part of this too. Every time you ask questions, every time you're curious about the organisms, every time you remind me that family matters more than work, you're helping build something better." They flew home the next day. The facilities were running smoothly under Sarah Kim's management. Production was up slightly. No crises had emerged during their absence. "Everything's fine," Sarah reported. "We got this." You can actually take time off occasionally without everything falling apart. Elena was learning that lesson. She couldn't control everything. She didn't need to. She'd built a team she could trust. She'd created systems that worked without her constant oversight. She could be CEO and scientist and mother without destroying herself trying to do all three perfectly. Spring became summer. The new facilities in Washington and California came online. Tidemark's production capacity increased dramatically. Rare earth prices began dropping slightly as increased supply entered the market. That was good. It meant the materials were becoming more accessible for clean energy technology. Environmental groups that had initially protested now celebrated Tidemark as a model for sustainable industry. The company received awards for environmental stewardship. Elena was invited to speak at conferences around the world. She accepted some invitations and declined others. Travel was important, but so was being present for Sofia's soccer games and school events and the daily moments that made up a childhood. Harold Vance announced his retirement in August. He was 73, ready to step back, satisfied that his legacy was secure. "I've made peace with the past," he told Elena. "Marcus and I were both too stubborn, too ego-driven. But you've taken our work and made it something neither of us achieved alone. That's enough. That's more than enough. You could stay. Keep consulting." "I could. But there's a time to let the next generation take over. Train your new researchers. Trust them the way you trusted me. Build something that outlasts all of us." Elena hugged him. "Thank you, Harold, for everything, for not giving up, for teaching me that it's never too late to choose differently. Thank you for giving me the chance." Vance's retirement party was held at the facility in September. Staff gathered to honor a man who'd gone from bitter adversary to valued colleague. He spoke briefly, emotionally. "I spent 30 years angry about what I'd lost. Elena gave me 3 years to remember who I was before the bitterness. That's a gift I can never repay. But I can pass forward the lesson. Choose growth over resentment. Choose collaboration over ego. Choose generosity over greed. That's how science is supposed to work. That's how life is supposed to work." October marked 2 years since Elena had first arrived at the facility. 2 years since she'd stood on that dock with a frozen key, staring at what looked like a tomb and turned out to be salvation. Sofia was 10 now, growing into a young woman who combined Elena's scientific curiosity with her own fierce independence. She'd started a science club at school. She volunteered at the Ocean View Aquarium on weekends. She talked about going to college and becoming a researcher and maybe working at Tidemark someday. "Or maybe I'll do something completely different," she said. "I haven't decided yet." Elena smiled. "You've got time to decide. You could be anything you want." "I know. You tell me that a lot." Because it's true. The anniversary fell on a Tuesday. Elena didn't plan anything special. It was just another workday. But when she arrived at the facility that morning, she found the entire staff gathered in the courtyard. Sarah Kim stepped forward. "We want to mark the occasion. 2 years ago, you inherited a secret facility and a technology no one knew existed. Today, Tidemark employs 300 people, operates 4 facilities, and produces materials that are genuinely changing industries. You've built something remarkable." She pulled out a plaque, polished wood with an engraved brass plate. "This is for you. A reminder that success isn't just about profit or production. It's about the lives we improve and the future we build together." Elena read the engraving through tears. Tidemark Biominerals, founded on science, built on community, sustained by purpose. In recognition of Dr. Elena Reyes, who transformed legacy into opportunity and secrecy into service. October 2023, present. "Thank you," Elena managed. "All of you. This isn't my success. It's ours. Every person here contributes to making this work. Every partner we've brought in. Every community we've invested in. That's what matters." They gathered for photos. Staff laughing, celebrating, proud of what they'd built together. Elena stood in the center, arm around Sofia, surrounded by people who'd become more than colleagues. They'd become family. That evening, after everyone had left, Elena walked down to the underground chamber alone. The organisms glowed softly, unchanged from 2 years ago, still processing seawater, still doing the impossible work Marcus had engineered them to do. She thought about her father, about his brilliance and isolation, about how he'd created something extraordinary but had died alone, having pushed away everyone who tried to love him. She thought about Harold Vance and the bitterness that had consumed him for decades before finding redemption in collaboration. She thought about herself, desperate, homeless, terrified, standing in this chamber for the first time and realizing she'd inherited wealth beyond imagination. And she thought about the choices she'd made. To continue the work instead of shutting it down. To bring in partners instead of operating alone. To prioritize environmental impact and community benefit alongside profit. To build something that mattered. Those choices had defined everything that followed. Elena pulled out her phone and opened her photos. Scroll back to pictures from 2 years ago. The Honda Civic packed with their belongings. Sofia sleeping in the back seat. The facility looking abandoned and threatening. Then recent photos. Sofia laughing at her birthday party. The staff celebrating production milestones. The new facilities opening. Communities thriving from new employment. The transformation was visible, documented, real. She composed a message to Dr. Kawamoto. 2 years ago, I called you from a facility I'd just inherited, terrified I'd made a terrible mistake. Thank you for believing in me. Thank you for connecting me with people who could help. Thank you for reminding me that scientific discoveries only matter if we use them to serve others. I'm trying to honor that lesson every day. Elena, Dr. Kawamoto responded within minutes. You've done more than honor it. You've demonstrated it. You've shown that wealth can be generous, that success can be sustainable, that science can serve humanity instead of exploiting it. I'm proud of you, Elena, not just for what you've built, but for who you've remained while building it. JK. Elena climbed the stairs back to the surface, locked the secure door behind her, walked through the facility, turning off lights, checking that everything was secure for the night. Outside, the Pacific Ocean crashed against the rocks. The same ocean that had fed her father's obsession. The same water that continued generating materials essential for clean energy technology. The same coastline that had been home to indigenous peoples for thousands of years before white scientists arrived thinking they could improve on nature. Elena had learned humility from this place. She'd learned that no one creates anything alone. That success without service was empty. That wealth without wisdom was worthless. She drove home to the apartment she shared with Sofia. Found her daughter finishing homework at the kitchen table, Pebbles sleeping nearby. How was your day, baby? Good. We learned about sustainable resource management in science class. Mrs. Patterson used Tidemark as an example. Elena smiled. What did she say? That your company shows how we can use technology to solve problems without creating new problems. And that businesses should think about more than just making money. Mrs. Patterson is right. I told her you were my mom. She was impressed. That's nice, but you know what? I'm more impressed by you. By how smart you are, how curious, how kind to others. That matters more than what I do for work. Sofia hugged her mother. I know, but I'm still proud of you. I'm proud of you too, baby. They made dinner together. Nothing fancy, just pasta and salad. They talked about Sofia's day, her friends, the upcoming science fair, where she wanted to present a project about ocean acidification. Can I use some of the organisms from the facility? Sofia asked, to show how changes in pH affect marine life. We'll figure something out. Maybe create a small demonstration system. After Sofia went to bed, Elena sat on the small balcony outside their apartment. The night was clear, stars visible despite light pollution from nearby towns. She thought about the future, not distant future, but tomorrow, next week, next year. There were challenges ahead. Competitors try to replicate the technology. Regulatory changes as governments figured out how to oversee bioengineered industrial processes. The constant pressure to scale faster, produce more, maximize profits. But Elena felt ready. She'd learned over the past 2 years that she was stronger than she believed, that she could lead without losing herself, that she could build wealth while maintaining values, that she could honor her father's legacy while creating something better. The phone on the table buzzed. Email, notification. Elena picked it up absently. The message was from someone named Dr. Thomas Chun, a researcher at Stanford. Dr. Reyes, I hope this message finds you well. I'm writing because I believe I've developed a complementary technology to your rare earth extraction process. My work focuses on bioengineered organisms that can capture and sequester carbon dioxide from seawater while simultaneously filtering microplastics. I've achieved promising results in laboratory settings, but lack the infrastructure and expertise to scale up. Would you be interested in discussing potential collaboration? Your approach to sustainable industrial biotechnology aligns perfectly with what I'm trying to achieve. I'm not looking for buyout or acquisition, just partnership with people who understand that environmental solutions need to be implemented urgently and responsibly. Best regards, Dr. Thomas Chun. Elena read the message twice. A year ago, she would have been overwhelmed by the prospect of another major project. But now she had systems in place. She had a team she trusted. She had resources to invest in work that mattered. She forwarded the email to Sarah Kim with a note. Potential collaboration opportunity. Can you evaluate and let me know if his research is legitimate? If so, let's set up a meeting. This was how it would continue. One partnership at a time. One innovation building on another. One choice to invest in solutions rather than just extracting profits. Elena looked up at the stars. Somewhere up there, molecules of rare earth elements that Tidemark had extracted were orbiting Earth in satellites. Others were in wind turbines spinning in fields across America. Others powered electric vehicles replacing fossil fuel cars. The work mattered. The choices she'd made mattered. And she was just getting started. She went inside, kissed Sofia's forehead while her daughter slept, and crawled in her own bed. A real bed, in a real home, paid for with wealth she'd inherited and transformed into something meaningful. Tomorrow would bring new challenges, new opportunities, new choices about how to use resources and power and influence. But tonight, she was simply grateful. Grateful for second chances. Grateful for the impossible gift her father had left her. Grateful for the daughter sleeping safely in the next room. Grateful for the journey from homeless and desperate to purposeful and secure. Marcus Reyes had built an empire in secret, alone, choosing research over relationship. Elena Reyes was building something different, a company that prioritized people alongside profit, collaboration alongside innovation, sustainability alongside success. The difference mattered. The difference changed everything. And in the underground chambers below the facility, organisms glowed softly through the night, processing seawater, extracting minerals, continuing their impossible work. Not for wealth, not for fame, just doing what they'd been designed to do, serving a purpose larger than themselves. Elena fell asleep thinking about those organisms, about how life, whether engineered or evolved, found ways to transform the ordinary into the extraordinary, about how seawater became rare earth elements, about how desperation became opportunity, about how the worst moments could become the foundation for the best outcomes if you were willing to see them. The tide pools spelled her name, someone had said in the story's title. Elena smiled at the metaphor. She was part of this ecosystem now, the ocean, the organisms, the technology, the community. All of it connected, all of it transforming each other. She'd inherited $449 million and a facility that produced more wealth every month. But the real inheritance was the choice to use it well, to build something her daughter could be proud of, to honor her father's brilliance while learning from his failures, to prove that success and service weren't opposites, they were partners. That was the legacy she was building. That was what mattered. The ocean continued its eternal rhythm outside her window. The organisms continued their work in the darkness below the facility. And Elena Reyes, who'd once had nothing but a frozen key and desperate hope, slept peacefully in a home she'd earned through courage and wisdom and the simple refusal to give up when everything seemed impossible. The story wasn't over. It was just beginning. Thank you so much for watching until the end. If you love this story, check out the other videos on your screen now. I think you'll really enjoy them. And don't forget to subscribe if you haven't already. See you in the next story.